All right, hello everybody, and welcome to Karthritis, episode 6. Starting with this episode, I am not going to guess the episode name up front. I'm going to we are going to put it in the links afterwards instead. So yeah, no more of the something. That said, I have already kind of decided what this one's going to be called, but whatever. Okay, so we're going to do the introductions, and the question for the day is, what was your favorite subject in school, both young and adult?
Ooh,
I didn't see that one coming.
nope.
So I guess in short for me it would have to be math/English as a young child. Those were always good, and the older I got, the more I got into psychology or anything attaining to that.
All right. Yeah, so I'm KVD. I was always very interested from an early age in physics and astronomy in particular. Like, I was blown away the first time I found out that the sun is actually also a star, just that it's closer to us. That very fact made me very interested in cosmology.
And that was a subject in the Dutch schools?
No, it was not. But my mother used to take me to the library, and I was, already attracted to the science section from a young age, without having a specific reason for it. It just draws you or it doesn't.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
then when I got to be close to an adult, you had to pick like which university or which study you were going to do. And I was considering to go for physics/cosmology, but then they requested like, well, you're probably gonna need A level or A plus level math and physics, and I was good at math, but not that good.
Right.
And I was also very interested in biology, which was a little more accessible, a little bit more compatible with my current skill set at the time, let's say.
Right.
So biology is what I ended up doing. So I am currently employed as a computational biologist, actually.
And not?
And not an astrophysicist.
No, I'm referring to our discussion the other day, where something about Patrick's Zelda run. There was a bioelectric anemone.
Right. I am not specialized in, what was it? Virtual creatures. No.
Right.
No.
Very disappointing that that's not part of your education.
Yeah, and then you asked what kind of education would you need to do. But maybe the answer is better left off the air.
Right. Right.
Jonesy here, Mark Jones. And I guess my favorite subject when I was younger, I'm assuming you mean like primary school age?
Well, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, probably I've always really been, I guess, good at math, and I've always enjoyed math. So I'm just thinking back, we used to have these classroom competitions. I'm talking like 2nd, 3rd grade, so I'm like 6, 7, 8 years old, where we'd I'm not sure if you guys ever played this game, but the teacher would hold up like flashcards, and they'd have like a math problem, like a arithmetic or a multiplication, and it was a race to see who could answer it first. And I always really loved playing that game, and I think I did pretty well. So I think maybe that was my I don't know if it was the whole like spirit of competition at an early age, but I was always enjoying math, and especially those like classroom type competitions. And I guess as I was thinking about that, I felt like there's a theme, because when I was in high school, my favorite class was physics, and we did a bunch of classroom competitions where we had to build mousetrap powered cars. We had to build a bridge to see who could hold which bridge had the best weight to strength ratio, and we built model rockets. And so I guess it was really fun to like solve these actual problems and try to optimize and try to improve, and also competing against classmates, which I felt was a really fun thing. And then I guess in college that I guess physics would still apply, because when I had free periods where I had to get so many units to graduate or just to stay full time or whatever, I usually backfilled them with lower level physics classes, so I guess I always just kind of I found that very interesting.
Yeah, gotta say your schools sound a lot better than the Norwegian ones suddenly.
Definitely.
Well, so I went to an all boys private Catholic high school, So I'm not sure how typical that is among a typical, an American public school. So I'm not, yeah.
I think it's also interesting, actually, that at least, I don't know how it's in Norwegian schools, but in Dutch schools, they tend to stray away from being overly competitive.
Yeah.
Like in terms of the curriculum that they offer you. But I of course also was quite competitive with this kind of thing. So I just wanted to get the highest grade, yada yada yada.
Yeah.
Right.
Like they didn't encourage competitions for who would solve it the fastest or whatever. That's I think that's the competitiveness of the American culture. I think it's more.
Well, so. Yeah, I was thinking about this too. Like, I was thinking about some of my favorite classes. So I was in college. I was a computer science major, and that's what I do now. As for work, I do software engineering type stuff. And my favorite computer science class it was an AI class, an artificial intelligence class, where one of the primary projects for the term we actually built you familiar with the game Othello or Reversi?
Yeah.
It's a board game. So the challenge was we had to write an AI that basically made move decisions for the game. And then the professor actually wrote a program that basically simulated games of all of our AIs throughout the whole class. And then we had like a tournament basically. And that was,
wow.
Yeah, it was really, really fun. And I actually continued to work on it after the class because I was so intrigued by that. So I guess maybe it's just the whole spirit of competition really is kind of what drives my interest in things. So
kind of noticed, yeah. That's early speedrunning genes.
Yeah.
Right. That's very interesting, actually. But your school had like 4 criteria. It was private, boys, Catholic, and one more.
It was a high school, so that's secondary education, I think. So like when I was 13 to 17. It was just so private. It was most Catholic schools are private, and it was just an all boys Catholic school. So,
right. Yeah. In Norway, we have nothing of the kind. We have public school. Yeah. End of list.
Yeah. That's it. End of list.
Let's say religiously based schools over here too, and public schools most.
Well, there are a very few, like a handful of private schools, and they're not gaining much traction really. So yeah, public. But I don't want to stray too much from your last couple of sentences, Mark, because that leads us neatly into the next topic. I hate doing this. It's more cringe than it's worth.
Segues.
Exactly. Not good. Anyway, the NeoGeo Mini was recently released in Eastern audiences. So
I've seen the notes here. It says NeoGeo Mini. Is this a mini version of the Mini, or is this just a NeoGeo Mini?
I think that's what they call a copy-paste error.
Okay.
So that one's on me. So it's a NeoGeo is sort of an obscure console to me, or it's more of an arcade, right?
I can't remember ever playing on one. I was trying to remember what was on the NeoGeo. Yeah. Like I've heard of a NeoGeo.
Right.
I just can't remember. I can't like off the top of my head say, oh yeah, these games are for the NeoGeo.
I can answer that for you because it comes packed with, and this is interesting because it sort of has to compare to the already released retro mini consoles, which are NES, SNES, Sega, Commodore 64.
There's a Sega Mini as well?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I actually wasn't aware that there was a Sega Mini. I knew that
typical Nintendo fanboy.
Yeah, exactly. Like I actually have all of those consoles. I have my Sega, my NES, and my SNES. It's like sitting in the closet next to me. But they just never seen me. Yeah, exactly.
Right. So the NeoGeo comes packed with 0 controllers, but it sort of has. It is the NeoGeo Mini itself is a mini arcade cabinet with a joystick and 4 buttons.
Okay.
So you can use the cabinet to both play with and on, but you can also buy separate controllers, plug them in, and plug it into a TV. So it's sort of a very bad Switch variation.
I was gonna say it sounds like a Switch.
What?
Yeah, it's just worse in every way, it seems. And it comes packed with 40 games, 10 or 11 of which are King of Fighters. So it's just King of Fighters 93, 94, all the way to 2002.
Okay.
So that's what NeoGeo are known for, apparently. How sad would it be if someone, or like EA Sports, released a console and it's just FIFA 64 all the way up?
Yeah, you get 30 soccer games or FIFA games. You get 30 Madden games, and you get 30 I don't know, some other sport, hockey games maybe. I don't know. You just get.
I think if I gave that to Patrick Wessels, he would jump off the top of our house.
Oh yeah, he's done with those sort of sports games on the 64 at least.
Yeah, so he has this challenge to complete all N64 games, and he was stuck in the mud of all the sports games for months.
There's like 50.
You could see him wasting away.
He's getting down. He's getting pretty close, right? He's like within the next month. He should be completing. Right?
He has 2 games left, and he is at the tail end of Ocarina of Time now. So pretty much only 1 game left, even.
Yeah. Super Mario 64 in a week and a half, something. Yeah.
So I've been seeing his updates on Facebook, and I've probably not spent as much time as I should have actually watching him play. I'm curious what's his criteria for completion of a game. So if for Ocarina of Time, could he just speed run the 80% route, do the 18-minute, 20-minute thing, and just call it done, or is he actually saying I'm gonna just play it? I'm gonna play every dungeon, or so I'm curious what his criteria is for completing a game.
Yeah, I think he's avoiding all sequence breaks, while still retaining a sort of an any percent feel.
I see. Okay.
So
80% no glitches.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah.
Pretty much.
Carol, do you know any more on this?
No, I think basically what he aims to get is just the credits, and he avoids sequence breaks mostly not because they would break the game, but just because they are generally harder to pull off. You need to put some practice in or knowledge.
Yeah.
You need to have knowledge of how they are done. And most of these.
So for a sports game, then do sports games have credits? I'm trying to think.
Yeah, some of them do. It's hard to get to establish a criterion for some of the games. Indeed, sports games. He actually got to the point that he almost didn't consider sports games a game anymore, but more of a simulation. But typically, you would just complete a season.
Yeah.
And some games then reward you with credits, others don't. But yeah, so you had to work with what he was given.
Interesting.
Well, sports games have to have credits, right? Every game needs credits.
Yeah, but some of them are accessible from the menu.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. Yeah.
So he had this wrestling game. Took him 12 hours, and he had to do a challenge mode. And after the last fight, it instantly just got back to the menu. There was nothing any token of appreciation that you completed the game or whatnot. It's just okay, I just spent 12 hours playing this horrible game, and now nothing.
Did he say 56 fights straight and then just menu?
Yeah, exactly. But most games are a little better than that, thankfully.
Yeah.
Not by much, though.
Not by much.
So after he completes the N64 library, he's going to move on to the NeoGeo Mini library. Is that right?
That's definitely not happening. Actually, he was on the show talking about what he may do next, and I've spoken about this a couple of times now. At first, it sounded like the worst idea I've heard Wessels come up with, which, there's some competition there. But he said he was going to replay some of the games so that he lowers his total completion time for N64.
Oh, I didn't realize he was actually keeping track of his completion time.
Oh yeah, he's over 1,400 hours now.
Oh my goodness!
Total.
So
Yeah.
is he going to start is he going to create a leaderboard on speedrun.com?
I'll plant that idea in his mind. Actually, it's not a bad one.
It's gonna be pretty lonely up there for a while.
Yeah.
Although there was a rumor one other person was doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm actually curious. So his timing then, He might have to call it segmented then, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not RTA.
No.
Oh, RTA would be over a year, yeah.
Yeah. Segmented speedrun of the console. That's ballsy. All right, I'm gonna segue again. I need to unsegue my head someday. Just do now we're onto this, now we're onto that. That sounds better. But we're onto mini consoles now, and we all know, I assume, the rumor about the N64 Mini.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right. So, well, yeah, we could do a 15-hour discussion on which 25 games needs to be on there. To be honest, I think picking games for the N64 isn't that hard. Must have been harder for the Super Nintendo. But,
yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I think like the N64 has there's like a dozen kind of iconic games that seem like no brainers, and then there's probably a couple dozen more that you could probably make a interesting case for.
And
250
no's.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, I guess so. One thing that I'm not sure of, just because I actually haven't purchased the NES Mini or the SNES Mini, is what I know it comes preloaded with games. But I'm curious what percentage of those games are Nintendo original titles and which are third-party titles. So do you guys have any knowledge of that? Like, are there like Donkey Kong Country, right? That's for SNES.
Mm-hmm.
That's a rare title. It's not a Nintendo in-house title.
Right.
So that's the distinction I'm trying to make, is what percentage of these games are, because I'm curious about like licensing and things like that. If there's issues with licensing, then you might expect the in-house titles to be more prominent on these mini console releases.
They pretty much are.
They are.
Okay.
Yeah. But Rare is like a unique position that it's like a second party, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was affiliated with Nintendo to the extent that it was almost first party.
Right.
But there are Capcom titles on it too, right?
Capcom, Konami.
Yeah. So there are third-party titles.
But
okay.
I think the vast majority are Nintendo titles.
Yeah, that would make sense. I mean, it's the easiest. It's the path of least resistance, right?
Yeah.
So if you have another entity that you have to have a contract and arrangement with, that seems like it would be a higher barrier for entry.
Absolutely. And I think Nintendo get the easy way out here because they made so many good titles themselves.
Right.
If you're really re-releasing the PS1 or something, Sony made like 3 good games. And the rest are third party.
Sony made games? I
didn't even know that either.
Yeah, they did, but very few. Like Ico, for instance, is a Sony game. The predecessor to Shadow of Colossus.
Okay.
But there are not many.
So I'm also wondering, like, from the top names in the N64 library, which ones are actually third party?
Yeah.
Well, DK, I'm pretty sure, isn't Donkey Kong 64, isn't that Rare? I think that's rare.
GoldenEye then, of course, as well, yeah. But
GoldenEye, Perfect Dark, those are both rare. Yeah. Smash is Nintendo, obviously. Yeah. Karts, all the Zelda titles.
Diddy Kong Racing would also be rare.
That's rare, right? Yeah. Yep.
But most of them are pretty much Nintendo.
Turok.
Turok is a claim, I believe.
Yeah,
one of them at least. I'm not sure they all are. I can't think of any non-Nintendo games off the top of my head for the 64.
Aiden Chronicles.
Aiden Chronicles. That's made by who, Carol?
I don't even know. They probably went out of existence shortly after.
Yes, absolutely.
It seems like if they get Rare on board, or if they have an agreement, that seems like it would cover most of the big ones, at least. Yeah.
I think there is an agreement there to some extent.
Yeah.
So, it shouldn't be too hard for the Nintendo 64 Mini. But, I know the other Nintendo Minis have caught some resurgence in activity. So, do we have any thoughts, Mark, regarding MK64 and relighting that fire?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I'm going to set this up for a segue into the next section.
Yeah.
But it's a little bit early, I know, for that. But at Virginia, I was talking about this with Drew Weatherton and some other people, and my biggest hope is just having a way to play multiplayer online, and whether or not that's going to be feasible or not is remains to be seen. But that's definitely something that I feel like So Nintendo, they made the announcement that they're going to be doing paid online for Switch.
Yeah.
So if they to me, it's like they have to, if they're going to start charging, they have to start delivering a service that's worth the charge, right? So I'm hoping that would include something like being able to play retro games online multiplayer. And I think that's something that I would definitely pay for. So I'm not sure if that's if I'm the exception or the rule.
No.
I feel like a lot of people would pay money for that.
Yeah,
So,
I think so too.
yeah.
I think all of the can I say 30-plussers would probably be on board with that kind
Right.
of. Yeah,
Right.
but what is
Yeah.
the retro library like on Switch, or is there even one?
Well, so that's the other thing I was thinking about is what kind of what kind of internal competition do these mini consoles pose to the virtual consoles that Nintendo has? I own a Switch, but I've actually just been playing. I played Mario Odyssey. I played that all the way through, and then I'm playing Breath of the Wild.
Yeah,
and I really haven't done much in terms of their online store. So I haven't needed to. Like, I have like 150 hours in Breath of the Wild, and I don't get to play a whole lot. So that's been basically occupying all of my time on the Switch.
I think that's a very common story, actually.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, pretty much everyone I've talked to has a very similar experience, I think. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, to be honest, I don't know. So I've owned the Wii, I've owned the Wii U. I've actually purchased Mario Kart 64 for both the Wii Virtual Console and the Wii U Virtual Console. I don't think you can buy it for Switch. I'm not even sure if it is a Virtual Console for Switch. But really, what I've been thinking about is just like, what's the is Nintendo has to be thinking about this with the in terms of, do they release a game on both a Virtual Console and also a mini console, and if so, does that, they have to have some sort of strategy here. I'm just not sure what it is. So,
I think they don't really see it as conflicting, because I think they released quite a few games on for instance, the SNES Mini and the Wii U Virtual Console, or the same game several times, because Nintendo games, they fly off the shelves.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, as I think about it, I probably would buy, if I liked a game enough, like Mario Kart 64, I probably would buy it on both just to have access to it in both contexts. So, yeah, I guess it's not as much as a conflict as I initially thought.
Remains to be seen, but I don't think so.
If it has easily accessible multiplayer online, I would really take my money, Nintendo, basically.
Right.
Yeah. I think many people feel that way with other games too, like GoldenEye online multiplayer with zero to little lag.
Yeah.
There's untapped potential there, Nintendo. But
so the other aspect with Mario Kart 64 in particular, I'm sure other games have similar issues, is that, so I'm not sure, are you guys familiar with the concept of scaling in Mario Kart 64?
Yeah.
So basically what's going on is in each multiplayer version of the game, so in the single player there's some lag, but it's not really that bad.
Right.
But then if you move to 2-player, 3-player, 4-player, the game basically the hardware can't keep up with the software. So instead of actually fixing the software and optimizing it so that it runs at the expected frame rate, Nintendo introduced something called scaling, which basically just advances you further per frame, so that it emulates like you're going at 30 FPS instead of actually when you might be going like 15 to 20 FPS.
Mm-hmm.
So that it works on original hardware, but when you play like on an emulator that's running on a PC that has no problem, now the game plays, it's unplayable because it's playing at like warp speed. So what's interesting is on the Wii release of Mario Kart 64 for the Virtual Console, they didn't fix that. So when you
Oh.
try to play multiplayer in 4-player on like most courses are like unplayable. Which so it's like they didn't like it's interesting that like they didn't even bother to address that, right? But then so this is what Drew Weatherton and I were talking about on the Wii U. They actually did fix it, and
Oh, wow.
what's interesting too about this fix is that the community actually there's some guys out there who've been basically building custom ROMs. So in Virginia, we use a custom ROM for our tournament, and on that ROM, even though we don't use it for our tournament, there's an option to disable scaling so that everything plays at the appropriate speed on faster hardware. And that's basically using a like it's overriding the RAM like in real time, like similar to like how a Game Shark would work. And what's interesting is that they looked at the Wii U version of this, and Nintendo applied the same sort of patch, which suggests that they didn't actually update the original source code and like recompile the source code into a ROM. They actually just like fixed the ROM. They patched the like memory hacking the ROM in real time on the Wii U Virtual Console, which seems like an interesting way to fix it since it's Nintendo. So the really what I'd be curious, like we were asking, like why would they do that? Like why would they do it that way? Like do they not have the original source code for Mario Kart 64 anymore? Like that's
It's probably the path of least resistance again.
Yeah.
Possibly. Yeah.
That is interesting, though. Maybe one of the history's first day 5,000 patches.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
I did not know that at all.
So yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they come out with an N64 Mini or some other way where you can play it online. Like they have to address that, and they already have addressed it with the Wii U, but it'd be interesting to see how they've addressed it for future releases, to see if they've actually done it kind of the hacky way or if they've actually recompiled the ROM or some other mechanism. So
well, there are more things interesting with the N64 Mini because the NES and the SNES Mini. Actually, this is a bit of a probably not a fun fact, but a fact nonetheless. The NES Mini was released in 2016.
Okay.
We got the SNES Mini the year after.
Mm-hmm.
And due to Nintendo doing Nintendo stuff and making very few so that the demand was higher than to make sort of a artificial rarity for the NES
Right.
Mini.
Yeah.
They released a new batch of NES Minis in 2018, and people have really dug deep to see what are the differences between the 2016 and the 2018 NES Mini. And it turns out they are not the same. There are slight exterior differences with the packaging and the power supply. But most interesting of all, if you pick it apart, you can see that the motherboard is different. It is actually a slight variation of the SNES Mini motherboard running the new NES Mini.
Yeah.
Interesting. So both the Nintendo and the Super Nintendo Minis are full-blown emulation consoles.
Right.
While the N64 is not that easily emulated, it's a complete different ballpark than those two.
Yeah.
So yeah, you may indeed get the exact issues like some games lag a lot, and Mario Kart 64 is no exception there.
Perfect Dark with Simulants.
Yeah.
That's like a PowerPoint slideshow at some point.
Yeah. So I don't think it's been officially announced yet, if I remember correctly.
No, I don't think it has. Yeah.
Right. It's just rumors and some sort of Walmart advert getting leaked somewhere, I think. So it's probably happening. I mean, it seems the next logical cash cow step.
Right.
So,
Right.
But it will be interesting to see what they do there, if they make it more as an hardware emulation to accurately depict the original, because it's so much more finicky than the NES and SNES, or if they go the emulation route again and make a brilliant emulator for it and apply said patches or whatever.
Right. Yeah, I mean, if I had to guess, my guess it would be, I mean, if all they're doing is providing a local, like if they're not going to support, if they wanted to support online, they wouldn't be able to do emulator, right? They'd have to build it from scratch, or more or less, they couldn't do it just the emulation route. But if they're just if they're just providing the local multiplayer, the local single player option, then my guess is that they would just go with the emulation route.
I'm afraid so too.
Yeah.
It's not unlikely. That is probably what we're gonna get.
Yeah, because it's the lowest investments from their side,
Yeah.
and they're still gonna sell them anyway. So
right, exactly. Yep. I'm actually curious what the so for the SNES, I know it supports up to 4 controllers, like on the original console. Does it support 4 controllers on the mini console?
I don't actually know that. It only has 2 controller connections, but maybe there is a multi-tap.
I think I read something about it, but I forgot. I don't even have one myself. I bought a Raspberry the dirty way.
Mm-hmm.
I do have one, and then I can confirm that there are 2 ports.
Gotcha. I feel like so some of the most iconic games for N64 are like basically party games. So like Mario Party, Mario Kart 64, Smash. Diddy Kong Racing, all these games that are basically, they have 4-player, and I'm not sure. I feel like you have to provide a way to hook up 4 controllers to this for it to be successful.
Yes, it is much more important for the 64 than the SNES. Actually, the Super Nintendo had very few 4-player games that were well implemented.
Right. Yeah, so definitely be interested to see how they address that, because I feel like. The other thing to consider is that the N64 controller, which I feel like is pretty, a lot of people, have very strong feelings about that.
Yeah.
But I feel though, like the N64 controller is, like I've tried playing Mario Kart 64 with 10 different types of controllers, and the original analog stick is really the only stick that you can play the game with if you want to play it at an extremely high level. So I'd be interesting to see if they have to provide some sort of controller, right? So, like, are they going to remanufacture the original N64 controllers, or they can provide some sort of different controller? Like, I'll be really interested to see how they tackle that, because I feel like that's a really important thing to get right.
Indeed.
And the analog stick for the N64 is well known to be, it wears down over time. So, I'll be interested to see also like how they address that part of it too.
I didn't really think about that, but that is, very important. Suddenly, karting might be completely different. Because most people who play a lot of Mario Kart, they are so used to one type of controller. And on the N64, I've also tried a few different ones. But I need a certain amount of resistance in the stick. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it doesn't work. If it's too much or too little, that's not good. Although I know some people swear that the GameCube retrofitted to the N64 is superior. I could not use that one.
The Hori pad.
I completely 100% disagree with that, and I think I'm not including myself in as a top level carder, but like I feel like if you were to poll the top 50 players or 100 players on the time trials rankings, I think almost like to a person, all of them would say that controller is complete garbage in its use case for playing MK64. So
yeah, I can also confirm that Wouter Jansen is a F-Zero X former world champion. Mm-hmm. He also tested a lot of N64 controllers, including the Hori pad, and they found the Hori pad completely unplayable or incompatible with high-level F-Zero X.
Right.
And he also confirmed that it's incredibly hard to get the stick right. So I'm also quite curious how they're gonna do that for the N64 Mini. Yeah, because it's very hard to emulate as well. Like he was trying to do testing on the N64 emulator, and he found it very hard to synchronize his N64 stick movements with the natural kind of
the way
it is meant to be.
Yeah, I've had the exact same experience. I've tried multiple. I know there's different input pieces of software that control the input for the emulators. There's like Jabo and some of these other ones. And I've gone through every one that I could find in all the various settings. I just could not. you can get it very close, but you can still tell a difference. So yeah, I back up his, I corroborate his findings. Yeah,
that's going to be, I feel now, a very interesting part of the announcement when it happens. What the controller's like,
Totally.
and the amount of ports.
Yeah, I mean, you think
Has to be
about
4.
Yeah.
you think about the NES controller and the SNES controller. I mean, they're both pretty simple. I mean, the SNES is basically just the NES controller buttons. And there's no analog stick. There's just it has shoulder buttons, but really there's no. It's just they're all binary buttons, right?
Yeah.
You just press them or not.
Yep.
So it'll be interesting to see, because this is, I feel like, in terms of just engineering or just just the overall manufacturing process too. It's an order of complexity more difficult, I think, because now you have an analog stick. You have basically just an analog stick now, and everything, and then more buttons. So
the N64 buttons aren't pressure sensitive, right?
No.
All right.
I think the GameCube, the shoulder buttons on GameCube are.
I actually, the little stint I had with MKDD, I opened up my GameCube controller and put some stuff inside the R button so that it wouldn't have to travel the full 3 inches.
Yeah.
So just a click like the N64 instead.
Right. Yeah, so is the GameCube controller, the shoulder buttons, are those sensitive to the range of the input, or are they just... Because I remember, like... I think they are too. I can't remember. I know, like, physically, there's a large range of motion there. But I was trying to remember if they actually had any kind of... If any games, like, leverage that. I just can't remember if that's...
I think so, but it's been so many years, and I didn't really play much GameCube.
Oh, we had Goomba on in the show earlier, and he explained to us how the RTech is basically still something that the top carders completely have no grasp of how it works, and that could be explained if there is actually a range-sensitive input in there that determines how good your RTech is going to be.
Right.
Then it would be very hard to get it right, right?
Are you saying that they don't understand it from a technical perspective, or that just players aren't? A lot of players just aren't up to.
From the top of my head, I think he pretty much said that they don't understand how it works from a technical perspective. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
He basically
Let alone from
a
gameplay point of perspective.
Yeah, it's just not well understood, is I think what he said. So you just do it and hope it works, but they don't really know how to practice or perfect it because they don't know the inner workings of the RTech, is what I got out of it.
There's only a few courses where that's important, right? Like Waluigi Coliseum or Wario. I can't remember the name of the course.
Yeah, Waluigi Coliseum. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's that one. Are there any other courses that have RTech involved? Or is that it?
I feel like there's one more, maybe Rainbow Road.
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the last corner of Rainbow Road, I guess.
Yeah.
I actually stopped. I did time trial MK the first 2 or 3 months when it came out, but A-Tech and R-Tech were things that were not around back then, and I've just kind of been I'm aware of them, and I know really what they do, but in terms of actually doing them, I've actually never tried. So yeah,
that surprised me when Goomba was on the show. He said they were invented or whatever, realized back in 2005 or something.
Well, the game came out in 2003, November 2003. So that would be about 2 years after the game came out.
Oh, yeah. Well, I had stopped playing by then. That's true.
Yeah, I think I stopped playing in early 2004. So I played for the first 2 or 3 months, I think.
Same here. Yeah.
Right. All right. Should we get into the deep of it all? Seeing as we have Mark Jones as a guest here, I think I referred to you as the godfather of MK64 last episode. Which is usually a name reserved for Sami of the SMK franchise.
Yeah, I don't know how appropriate that title is. I feel like Kevin Booth probably deserves that title since he was I've been around since 2001, which you think about it, that's a long time. But I still think exactly, new school. Guys like Kevin Booth, David Wan, they were back in 1997.
Yeah.
And then you get guys like Alex and Steven Z and some of these other guys, back around in the 90s. So I still like, I think of them. Well, even how did I forget William Lacey? Like, he's still around. So
that's true.
Yeah. And Lacey, to his credit, he's the guy that makes the site run. So I technically own the site. I don't really feel like I kind of feel uncomfortable saying like I own the site. I kind of feel like I'm more of like a curator of the site. Like I allow it, I keep it up and running, so I don't want to take credit for it because I didn't come up with the site. I don't make the site run on a day-to-day basis other than, paying for the hosting fees. But so I just I feel like I want the community to continue to exist and the site so that's kind of my role. I don't really feel like I think Godfather might be the wrong term. Like, I would probably say Booth is the Godfather of 64. I might be the Godfather of the forum since I created the forum.
That's your claim to fame, the forums.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. So, if you talk about origin stories, basically, Kevin Booth started the players page back in the 90s. And there were other sites around like Rex's site. I think, some other kind of, various competing sites. I think Andy Lonsbach had a site at one point back in the 90s.
Wow, these are some names that bring back memories.
Yeah, right. And then the Mario Kart 64 site it was being hosted on the random web hosts like Pro Hosting and some of these other random sites. Kevin Booth actually bought the name, the domain name MarioKart64.com. I have no idea how he actually got that name. I'm still waiting for the day where Nintendo comes to me and says hey, you can't have the site anymore. He basically, Kevin wasn't really in a good place to continue hosting the site, so I offered to take on take over and take it on, and that was in 2003 2004. So this is right when MKDD had come up. Actually, my original involvement with the site in the community is I actually created the first Mario Kart Super Circuit page, or it was actually during the Japanese release before we even knew it was called Super Circuit. Back then it was Mario Kart Advance, which is that's the name of the Japanese game. So this is 2001. I joined in June 2001. I created the first Super Circuit site in August of 2001, along with Brian Gallo and another name you might remember past. Although he really didn't do
good and bad reasons.
For good and bad reasons, right? So we kind of co-launched the site, although I did most of the work. And then actually I was able to do this because Michael Lyam, another old name,
Carol,
he actually had.
Could you do the honors of pronouncing that?
Michael Lim.
Lim. Okay. Yeah. He had back in the day, the Mario Kart 64 site was run basically from an Excel spreadsheet where people would take the submitted times, post them into an Excel spreadsheet, and then Michael had written some Visual Basic macros in Excel that generated HTML pages or Excel sheets that were then exported as HTML pages, and then were uploaded manually via FTP to whatever hosting provider there was. And that's I basically took Michael's template for that for 64 and converted it to work for Mario Kart Super Circuit. And that was how the Mario Kart Super Circuit site ran for the first 6 months until I was tired of doing it manually like that. And then Penev actually, he said, "Hey, I have an idea for the Double Dash site." Let me take this back. I think the Double Dash site ran on that same Excel macro template base for a month, and then Penev said, "Hey, I can do this better." And basically, how the sites run now, Penev came up with that design in late 2003, early 2004. I think it was March of April of 2004. Penev, we converted the existing site over to Penev's site, and then Alex has basically been re-templating every additional release in the franchise. Penev is basically re-templating his original MKDD site to fit the new game. So that's more or less how things have shaken out over the last 20 years or so. So anyway, I know that was a wild tangent.
That's fine. Oddly, I remember a lot of this, but you just walk around with the dates and the orders and all.
I think it's also important to stress how I think all the Mario Kart time trial rankings use this same system by now.
No, actually, no. So Mario Kart 64 still runs on Lacey's. It's completely separate, so that doesn't it doesn't run on Penev's structure. And then the Mario Kart 8 site was recently built by a guy named Jazzy, and that runs on a different database and front end as well. Although I'm not, So I think there's some issues there, but I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. But I would say for almost every site though is on Penev's template. So anyway, we're talking about giving like credit or status. I definitely would, I feel bad taking any kind of credit when I basically just, make sure things are accessible online, where guys like Penev and Lacey are really doing all that.
So what you're saying is that you're basically the sugar daddy of Mario Kart 64.
Yeah. That's I'm fine with that. If that's what you want to call me, that's fine.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember that you made a post sort of recently in which you had calculated how much you had paid through the years to keep the domain in the air, and I was just wondering if you plan on doing that, like paying for it indefinitely, or perhaps considering a more crowdfunding kind of initiative in the future, or...
Yeah, it's not very... Yeah, it's not very expensive. I mean, we pay... our host actually is kind of expensive in terms of, like, relatively expensive for other hosts. Penev's sites require certain things, like it's Postgres SQL backend database. You actually need shell access. So I've explored alternatives, but I mean, right now it's really in the grand scheme of things, it's really that much money. So I think the hosting fees are like $12 a month, and then the domain names I actually own. So I own like 5 or 6 domain names. I own MarioKart64.com, MarioKartPlayers.com, MK7PP.com, which is like or MKWPP. Sorry, that was so Mario Kart Wii came out and they had the online. It was the first Mario Kart with online mode. Actually, I take that back. DS had online mode, but you couldn't have your name. I don't think you could display your name to other people. I could be wrong about that. Anyway, so the idea with MKWPP.com is people could advertise the Mario Kart Players page on the online mode of Mario Kart Wii by putting their name as MKWPP.com, and then MKWPP.com redirects to the Mario Kart Wii site on Mario Kart Players. And we had that. So I have that domain. I'm actually just holding Mario Kart Wii. Isn't like there's no official online mode anymore. I'm just actually holding on to MKWPP.com because it's a 5-letter domain. And short domains actually are increasingly rare and essentially going up in value. So I'm hoping that either, obviously it's not like a monetary thing, but if I have it, there's really no point in getting rid of it. So, yeah. So anyway, I think so. MK7PP, MKWPP, Mario Kart Players, and Mario Kart 64 are the 4. There might be another one, but I'm forgetting. But anyway, it's not that big deal.
Meanwhile, I think Zarkov has joined us.
I have indeed. Good afternoon.
Clarkster, hiya.
How are you doing?
How you doing?
Hey, Clark.
Yeah, good.
Clark, do you want to do the introduction thing post intro?
Go for it, man. I mean, I'm going in cold, but I'll go for it.
Right, everyone's going in cold except me. It's sort of
It's
the deal.
Yeah, you always
That's the gimmick.
That's the gimmick. So before we get back to talking to Mark Jones, just state your name and your favorite subjects in school, both elementary and later on.
Right, okay then. Hello, this is an easy one, man. This is an easy one.
Oh.
Hi, I'm Zarkov, also known as Clark, and my favourite subjects, if you know me, you'd have guessed this. It was physical education, PE. They were my favourite. Because I could just play sport all the time. I could play football, and I could swim, and I could do track and field, and all of this jazz. And so, yeah.
I remember we could never play football. I like every PT class I wanted to play football, and we almost never did.
Yeah, same here.
Nice. Oh.
I guess.
So what you're saying is PE is Zarkov approved? Is that right?
Yeah, PE is Zarkov approved, definitely.
The only subject to get that title?
I also enjoyed geography and most sciences. I enjoyed the sciences, though I sucked at maths. I was so bad at maths. But yeah, science and stuff. Yeah, enjoyable stuff. I mean, like also the school I went to was a like religious school, and so we had to like. I don't know if this is the same elsewhere, but in the UK at year 9, so when you were 13, you had to choose options and you had to choose a subject you wanted to do.
Yeah.
And in most schools across England at the time, you could do RE, studying religion was one of the options. But in the school I was in, I was a bit of a militant atheist even at that age. And so I just refused to take part. I just sat in the classes and didn't do anything. I got thrown out quite a lot. But
That's a funny story.
yeah, I thought I was being tough. Looking back on it, I was just being a fucking idiot teenager, like we all probably were. But yeah,
That's a normal part of growing up, being a stupid teenager, right?
yeah, of course, it's a rite of passage.
Exactly, yeah.
So yeah.
All right, thanks for joining us, Clark. We've been through actually the bulk of the topics.
Right. Well, I mean, if Jonesy doesn't mind me waffling on for a bit more, I've got because I wasn't in the episode last time you did it, and it was a shame because I love Matt. He's a top bloke.
Right.
But yeah, so I've got a sort of stupid Matt Ballard, very loose, sort of weird story based on him, very loosely related to him. Basically, this is going to sound immensely weird, but I've got this route when I go running. It's a 2K route, and I don't like if you run a lot or if you do some exercise, you know when it's feeling good, and so because Matt, his surname is Ballard, right, and that's very close to the word bollard, and on my route home near the end, there's this bollard which if I'm feeling good for whatever reason I touch it as I run past it, I like slap it. And in my head, I call that a Ballard touch, and it's like a good luck charm. Like if I'm feeling good, I touch the Ballard. It's a really strange story. But,
So you're gonna use the real thing as a good luck charm during CDM?
of course, yeah. If I'm feeling good, I'm gonna go and touch Matt Ballard sensually.
Hey Matt, I need you. I need you to stand out on the street here for about 10 minutes. I'm not going to explain why. And then as you run around, he's just like standing there, and
just go slap his ass as I run past.
yeah.
But yeah. So that was I was sad I didn't get to tell it him in person, but I guess he can hear it. And I'm seeing him in a few days' time. I can always tell him that.
Right. And for the record, Clark, I very much would like to hear more about this Clark 6.5 or whatever that's running around doing exercises and stuff.
well, when I was younger, I was a really fit, active teen, and I was on the England swimming team at one point when I was 14,
Really?
15.
Wow.
Yeah. Swimming's always been the sport I've been into the most, but at that age, I was also, as I aforementioned, an idiot teenager, and so I liked drinking and trying various things with my friends, and so I gave up swimming, but I still played football. But when I hit sort of 19, 20, I stopped all exercise, and I started eating a lot, and as you know, you get fatter, and so about sort of 6 or 7 years ago, I was just fed up of being fat again, and I was like, I want to get back to my physical prime. I just started exercising, and I have done ever since. It's just been a way. It's just been a way of life for me, basically now. As I was telling Marius the other day on that FFSMK stream.
Yeah, I'm almost tearing up. That's such a. I like that story. I like it.
Oh, cheers. Well, it's just basically, I've had my years of being unhealthy, so no, I can't. I don't have any excuses anymore. So I'm just have to be healthy from now.
Yeah, you did your part as an unhealthy adult, and that's that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Cool. So let's get to the issue at hand. So on the Discord channel, there was some kerfuffle regarding the Virginia meet. And that's part of the reason we have Mark here, so that he can speak the point of a participant. As we obviously sitting around here, I've never been. I don't think any of us have.
Nope.
I'd love to one year, but
Oh,
no,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I've never got.
Yeah, it's actually a really it's a really neat experience, and I definitely encourage you, all of you guys, to make the effort to attend. I'm actually not entirely sure how long it's going to keep going, but I definitely feel like that should actually be a driver to like actually want to try to come sooner rather than later, just because it's everyone's getting older, having kids. People are
That's incredible.
it's so one thing that not everyone may know is that it's being hosted at someone's house. It's literally Drew Weatherton's parents are like hosting people at their house. So that again, I just feel like at any moment in time, like they just be like, it's we've had a good run, but it's not it's becoming no longer feasible for us to do this. So that wouldn't entirely surprise me. It kind of actually felt like that's been potential, for any, for a couple of years now. So, yeah.
Well, I think the thing which entices me about VA is the fact that it's not so exclusively bound to sort of one game or sort of playing video games the entire time. There seems to be a bit more sort of hanging out and doing some other stuff. Like I'm always jealous of the poker game I hear about.
yeah.
And I love poker. I'd love to take part in that. And
and that's another dynamic that I think a lot of people don't really appreciate is that it didn't start out. It didn't. The original intention of this wasn't to be the North American Mario Kart 64 multiplayer championship. That kind of evolved naturally out of this meet. Originally it was, I would say mostly GoldenEye. There was, I think, the very first year there was like 16 people, 15, 16 people. And I think it was pretty well split between, I actually even think there's probably more GoldenEye players than Mario Kart 64 players. And, it was basically a week of just kind of hanging out. It's on this, it's on a lake. It's like literally on the lake. And it's like a huge house. I don't know how many square footage, but it can 30 people can be in there comfortably, and just give you a sense of the size.
Wow.
Of the house.
Feels like a mansion.
It is. It really is. It's like 3 levels. And the other thing really that just goes back to the hosts. The Weathertons are just amazing people. I think as a homeowner, I own a house and I have a family, and I just the sheer logistics of like having that many people over at your house, and then like they prepare food and they clean the house and do like wash the sheets and all this stuff. It's just kind of amazing that they are like willing to do this, and I always just go out of my way to thank them, because I they don't have to do this; they're just doing it to be
really cool. That is,
right.
Excellent stuff. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure Carol could attest to how much organisation goes into something like that. Recently,
so I'm curious. Like, so for CDM, as someone who's viewed CDM through on Twitch and through other people talking about it on the forums and things like this, I imagine that with the size of CDM now, that people don't stay, like the venue doesn't actually house people, or does it?
No, it does not.
I figured.
Stop doing that.
2012 was the last time that happened, wasn't it?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So nowadays, most we did the CDM at La Suze for a couple of years, and there conveniently they had a campsite where a lot of people could just pitch their tents, and then the other people would just get a hotel, and then that was basically your own responsibility then.
Right.
But this one is a little more tricky, though. I could go on for a tangent for 5 minutes, but I won't.
Well, I do remember at some point that CDM had people staying on site, and I can't remember like what was the first year of CDM?
2002.
Oh wow!
But it was just French championships, so only French guys going. The first time I joined, I was the first non-French speaking participant in 2007. And then there was definitely people sleeping only in the venue, and it's. I remember it being crazy hot, and the schedule was completely out there. Like
Yeah.
we had the Grand Prix final at 11 in the morning, for example,
Holy
after a whole night of playing.
Wow.
So
I think the sole crossover part is actually no. I take that back. Now MR has been to both CDM and Virginia now, but for a while there, I think the only person who had been to both was Duff, and so
Yes.
I talked to spoken to Duff as well as anyone could technically speak to Duff about CDM, and I remember him telling me about about it, and I remember like Duff has this kind of reputation for being able to like fall asleep at like in any position and like anywhere, and I was never 100% sure if Duff was like sleeping there because he just fall asleep or because people were actually like sleeping there like because that's where they were staying.
well, Duff is a unique case just for the fact that he also sleeps on the streets.
Yeah, okay. Not
Very
surprising.
true. Yeah.
But yeah, he does still sleep at the venue. But then it's like during the daytime we have to wake him up when he has to play a match. It's,
I must admit, in terms of Drew, Duff, whatever, he's become a lot more, if that's even possible, a lot more mature for Drew ever since he's had a kid, which just baffles my mind.
Right, yeah. I always feel like Drew is playing a character. I feel like he's method acting. I feel like he's like Daniel Day-Lewis or Joaquin Phoenix. That's like he's immersed himself in this Duff role, and I feel like he's a lot more on top of things and more intellectual than people give him credit for. I think he feel like he's playing a character.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
I'd agree with that 100%. Yeah.
Okay.
Because he's given like we also know this kind of this Duff persona at World Championships, and he does all kinds of crazy stuff, and he sleeps on the streets and whatnot.
Yeah.
And then after each CDM, typically he's the one that also grabs the microphone and does a speech, and it's usually like a politician speech almost, very polished, and like whoa, this guy is very well spoken actually, and very intelligent.
Well, he went to UCLA, which is a very it's a public school, but it's one of the best public schools in the United States. So I feel like anyone who's attending UCLA, and I'm pretty sure he graduated. Like I feel like you have to have some level of baseline intelligence to just make that for that to be the case. So anyway.
well put indeed.
Yeah. Some of my favorite I have two kind of Duff memories to share from Duff at the VA meet. The first one really isn't. It's not a specific memory. Just that he would just the house is on a lake, and so he would just go swimming, and he would I'm gonna swim across the lake, and this is like a big lake. This is I don't know how far it is, but it's I would say at least half a mile, maybe more. I don't know, but he was just I'm gonna go ahead and just gonna swim across the lake. He would just take off. He'd jump into the lake and just start swimming like a madman. Nice. And so he would just do these weird stuff. And then my other favorite, this is a specific year. I can't remember what year it was, but he was notorious for not coordinating with anyone in terms of hey, I'm actually coming. He would just he would just show up sometimes. And so one year he flew to Richmond. So the other thing for context, this lake house is kind of in the middle of nowhere. It's on a lake, but it's Richmond, which is the closest kind of medium-sized city, is probably about an hour away. Washington, D.C., which is the large city, is probably 2 hours away, 2.5 hours. So Duff flew into Richmond one year, and which is probably 45 miles or something. He literally he was just trying to hitchhike or something, but he went to a toy store / sporting goods store. He bought a bike. And bought a bike and rode it to Virginia to the house. And then I think he rode on the way back. He rode it back to the store and returned. I think that was his strategy for getting.
That is absolutely brilliant. I'd never heard that one.
And I think there might be some other details I'm leaving out, but it was just I remember him telling this. We were just all flabbergasted. What is this guy doing? But
if anything sums him up, it's that, I think.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. He just appears in Europe quite a lot, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Just no idea how he got there or when he got there. He's there and then he vanishes one day. Yeah.
So so last year we actually had quite a lot of people attending the VA meet, and the Weathertons have basically said, hey, our septic system and like our beds, like we basically have to put a cap on the number of people attending. And last year, Zoran and MR and they were coming, and that came for the first time. We had a lot of people returning, so we actually were up against the cap. The other thing is people are getting older now, getting married and having kids and families. It's not a couple times people have been wanting to bring their wives or girlfriends and kids. So we basically had to say, hey, look, we have to put a cap on this. The Weathertons have a lot of space, but they don't have unlimited space. And then we also have to prioritize people who are attending the meet as, an individual gamer kind of part of the community. And then, so we basically had to say okay, there's a cap. You have to sign up. So Duff, if you're reading this, you can't just show up. You have to tell us. Which, last year, I think he may have already had the kid last year, or I don't know. But anyway, I'm not sure if his inability to show up unannounced was detracted him from coming or something. But we basically had to implement a Duff policy. You can't just randomly show up now because of the cap, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, my most very recent, the last few days Duff story is I sent him a PM on the message board for the 2017 CDM, and I said, hey man, if you're coming into the UK first, give me a shout, we can meet up, hang out, whatever. If not, no worries, see you there. Didn't get a reply until about 3 days ago. He's like, oh, hey, no, I'm not going to be flying into the UK this time. There's no fucking use to me now, is it? A year later.
A year ago.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, it's just brilliant stuff.
Should we talk about the tournament? As I feel like that was kind of a hot topic in Discord
please.
The other day. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so just let us in on how it feels like to be there and how you feel this year was for you and the competition and everything.
Sure, yeah. So I just I guess maybe I feel like some context is probably in order. So I want to just kind of recap how the tournament started and how it's kind of evolved over the years. So kind of going back, so the first year of Virginia was 2007, and again it was kind of a split GoldenEye Mario Kart. I think the way this happened is Drew was trying to get this going for a while, and he basically put out the idea on the Mario Kart boards and on the Elite boards. And I felt like I was reading this topic maybe a year ago or something, but I remember, so the Weathertons, they kind of have this a house rule, basically, no alcohol, and that wasn't very well received on the Mario Kart boards, but on the Elite boards, people really didn't care too much. So I think that might kind of set some context for how the mix of people originated. And then, but one of the people that was in the first year was David Wan. And David Wan, I'm sure you guys, he's pretty well known in terms of his shortcut exploits. He's been around since the 90s. He played Super Mario Kart. I think he found some shortcuts there as well.
Yep.
So he kind of originated. He kind of set the first Mario Kart tournament in 2007. Also, just for context, my first year was 2008. I missed the first year, unfortunately. But David Wan he was responsible for organizing the tournament, and he was responsible for kicking this tradition off, essentially. And they also had a GoldenEye tournament. So they had a GoldenEye tournament. There was actually 3 big tournaments for a long time. There was a GoldenEye tournament, a Mario Kart tournament, and a table tennis tournament. And everyone was, pretty... Some people were pretty good at all 3. So they were kind of, they went the whole week where you would have people in stages. You have a knockout stage, and they didn't do it one after the other. They did, in tandem. So you'd have people playing GoldenEye and Mario Kart and table tennis kind of all week long, and then Friday night, which is Friday or Saturday night, end of the week, the final night, they would kind of culminate all 3 tournaments and crown a champion. So that's kind of how the original time frame and structure of these things kind of started. And then they basically they kept going every year. So they had, again, in 2008, they had a Mario Kart tournament, a GoldenEye tournament, a table tennis tournament. And then up through 2012, that was basically the format every year. 2012 was an interesting year because they had a bunch of people from Australia came. So Carl Jobst, Ryan Dwyer, who's also known as Your Eliteness, Glenn Stevens, who's an old school Mario Kart player, but also probably better known for GoldenEye, and Patrick Johansson, also known as Neo. So those 4 guys came, and then also David Clemens came from Minnesota, Brian Bosshart, and it was like 30 people, 35 people. It was the biggest year. And all of the tournaments went just crazy long. I think they were finishing up like table tennis and GoldenEye. Like it's like 3 or 4 in the morning on Friday, and it was kind of like they weren't well organized. That people just kind of played whenever they wanted. This is kind of pre-Twitch, although I think we did stream a little bit on Twitch, like 1 or 2 matches or something. But basically, they weren't well organized. A lot of people were participating in multiple tournaments, and like it was sometimes hard to like round people up. And then that's more or less like that year. Basically, like the other thing is that these tournaments were in addition to just hanging out at this beautiful giant lake house for a week and doing other things like playing poker and playing other like random video games, swimming in the lake, playing like volleyball and other like activities outside. And so the tournaments, like the VA meet was never just it's a Mario Kart 64 championship like meet. Like that's never been the primary reason for it, but it's kind of evolved into that sort of still. So after 2012, people were like, hey, we need to rein back on the tournaments. We need to, like, it's too much. Like there's too, like people want to just enjoy themselves, but also not have to play in 3 tournaments till like 5 a.m. on the last night or something. It's just, we need to like make a change. So that was the last year that David Wan was organizing the Mario Kart 64 tournament, and they basically stopped the GoldenEye tournament. 1v1 GoldenEye it's like really high competition, but they basically know who the best players are, and so it's not really super interesting anymore. Basically, it's down to like Patrick Nielsen, Eddie Levins. I think Isa when he only came I think last year, but basically like they know it. Yeah, who?
He did win as well.
Yeah, he did, right. So, but it's less. It's not as exciting for the viewer, I think, and it's also like some of the tactics in 1v1 GoldenEye. It's just like you have 2 guys sitting around a corner, like they're just peeking out, like just popping out, like firing, and it's not as interesting. So,
player brings a much more interesting dynamic.
Yes, it does, but it also has more lag, right? So that's not, yeah. So anyway, like basically after 2012, like Juan gave up control of the tournament. Now it's more kind of like I've kind of been leading like the organization parts of it, but it's not so much like in the old days. Like Juan was just like, this is how we do it, and now it's kind of like, hey, let's like we've been like more. It's like more discourse throughout the community. Like so, people in were wanting non-shortcuts, so we had like people. We asked for people's input, and in 2016. We switched it to all non-shortcuts. So it's kind of like a living, breathing thing, and it's not just one person saying, this is how we do it. But anyway, so that was a big change in 2012 to 2013. And also, like the GoldenEye tournament went away, and the ping pong tournament, or the table tennis tournament, that kind of went away as well. Like, people still play, but there's not like a huge tournament anymore. So really all that's left kind of just out of, and I think the reason why it's left is because people really enjoy it and enjoy watching it as well, is the Mario Kart 64 tournament. And so it's kind of, it's been consistent throughout the years as it's been part of the week, but now it's kind of morphed into this like the de facto Mario Kart, like North American Mario Kart 64 championship, right? So, but it's not like CDM where it was this thing was dedicated to this tournament, and it's never been like we're gonna determine a champion in every single mode, like battle mode and 2-player GP, 2-player versus, 3-player versus, 4-player versus, time trials. Like you could do that, and that's kind of what the European meet has become, although on a much smaller scale. But for me personally, I think most people would maybe agree that 4-player versus I feel is kind of like the quintessential mode, and not
It's what it's what everyone remembers Mario Kart 64 for, right? Isn't it?
Right, yeah, it's a party game at its heart, and
Yeah.
for me, I feel like it's the same thing with a GoldenEye, where 1v1 is a little bit too predictable. 4-player versus, I think, has that right balance of rewarding skill, but also being entertaining enough and chaotic enough that it keeps people interested in watching it and also in playing it as well. So and that's kind of, it's always been 4-player versus, although I should say in the old days, in the WAN days, we used to go 4-player versus for the qualification rounds. The semifinals were actually 1v1 as 2-player GP, and then went back to 4-player versus for the finals. So in 2013, we made it just all 4-player versus. So that's
sorry. Is it so the top 2 go through each time? Is that correct? Right into the final?
So the way it's been working for the last since 2013 is we have initial play-ins to get to a field of 16. So typically our field is anywhere from like 18 players at the smallest to about 24 players at the largest. So like last year we had 24 players. So we have this initial people generally get auto bids, so they get placed in the top R16 round by virtue of either their finish from last year, or in the case of like a returning champion, like if MR, he didn't come this year, but if he came next year, like we would have to give him an auto bid. Like he's too good not to, like, basically you don't want people in the play-ins that shouldn't be in there essentially. So basically you have a play-in system to get down to the top 16. In the top 16, you have multiple rounds per player. In the past we did up to 3. Typically now we do 2. And then you take the top 8 in points. So if you have 16 players all playing that like multiple times, they just accumulate points. And then you take the cutoff at 8, and you take those top 8, you reseed them for the semis. And then you have, in the semis, you have 2 groups of 4. And then from the semis, you take the top 2 from each group and move, and they advance into the finals. There's been some discussion about maybe switching up the semi format a little bit for next year. But basically that's how it's been working since 2013, is you get to 16, then you get to 8 based on points, and then you get to from the 8 you take the top 2 from each group of 4, and then you have a finals, which is winner take all.
That's awesome. So who was in the final this year? I know Beck was there and Frankie, right?
Yeah. Yep. So this year it was Beck came in first, Frankie came in second, JT came in third, and then Kyle came in fourth.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Because I didn't get to see any of the stream this year, so I kind of want to watch the final back if I can at some point.
Yeah, no, I would actually recommend, if you have time, both the semis, particularly one semi in particular was a really entertaining round. It was the one with Dan, Kyle, Frankie, and Jake. That's a really, really interesting. It's really close. It comes down to the final race. There's actually a point at the final race where all of them could have been tied, like a 4-way tie. And then the finals is really good too. Also, last year's finals is really good to watch. That was MR, Zoran, Boss, and Abney. That was a really great. Again, same thing when it came down to the very final race. At one point in the last cup, within like 2 or 3 tracks to go, everyone was like within a couple points of each other. So
yeah, I remember watching last year's one. It's a really good watch. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything specific? Because we also covered it a little bit in our previous episode, and then there was, of course, some flag from Discord and MK64. Is there anything specific that you want to like set the record straight for, in terms of what?
I mean, not particularly. I don't want to go point by point. I mean, I think it was people just wanted to have maybe someone who was there, kind of giving their take, which I'm definitely happy to do. And thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming on.
I don't want to like rehash the Discord feedback, but I'm definitely happy to talk about individual aspects of the tournament. So I know one of the things I think that's come up a lot, maybe not just on your podcast, but also in general, is like the concept of randomness in determining the outcome of the of a race or a match. I feel like that's, I know a lot of people like to use RNG kind of as an excuse for not playing well. I feel like Mario Kart 64, while it has more randomness than maybe some other games, over the course of 16 races, I'd say the vast majority of the time, the people that play the best score the best and advance or win. So while there is a component of that, I feel like that's kind of what makes it fun and interesting. And it's I think a lot of people kind of don't appreciate the depth and skill that goes into Mario Kart versus 4-player. Because it's not just time trialing, and that's where a lot of people
it's a little less transparent. Like
yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So I feel, and one of the things, I feel like, I'm not a top 10 time trialer, but I feel like I can hang with anyone in 4-player versus by virtue of that fact. That's not just about who can grind every single corner to the the 100th of a second. I feel like that's not what 4-player versus is about. 4-player versus more is to me, it's more about item tactics, while also obviously speed's very important. Like, you can't be slow, but I feel like there's a range where the speed difference really stops to matter.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So
that's quite like, it's because it's like in SMK multiplayer, it's typically the most consistent people. I think the people who crash the list who generally do that.
Yes.
Yeah, Sami. Yeah, like just continue like the same. Yeah, whereas MK64 is a bit more nuanced, isn't it? Like you can with very good tactics, you can hold your own against some really good players. Right?
Yeah, so I feel like consistency is very underrated, because like in time trials, consistency, while it helps, it's like the outcome of time trials is basically your best effort over thousands or hundreds, more than that of attempts, and it's really just who had the one best attempt out of it, regardless of like how many times you failed. Where in 4-player versus, consistency is a lot more important in terms of like, it doesn't matter if you're a tenth slower, but if you can drive around, if MR is 0.2 faster than me on each lap, but he crashes 40% of the time, I'm okay with being 0.2 slower if I only crash 10% of the time or something like that. So, right. So really, like when I used to not be very good at all. Like I was terrible. And I made a concerted effort starting in 2013 to get better specifically at 4-player versus. And so I started by going back and watching old film and like old championships, whatever matches were captured on film, like I would go back and watch. And then I just started practicing like on my own. And that's another thing that's definitely difficult to do, is like you can practice, like I have Game Shark codes where like, the CPUs basically will drive around as bots, but it's not the same. You really need experience at playing other high level players, which is something that it's really hard to do because everyone's all spread out. So, but basically, when in my practice against bots and other things like that, I just worked on consistency, avoiding certain things. Like I'm not going to take this turn like I am in time trials because it's a popular place to play traps, or there's a bomb there or something like that. So I basically I worked on how do I minimize my own mistakes as a first step in trying to like not be terrible at this game. So
Sorry, man. Sorry for jumping in, but sort of like when you say like some people's first CDMs, it's always funny to see. Like I remember when Christian Wilde went for the first time, he was really good time trial wise, like really highly ranked. Mm-hmm. And you just get smashed your first time you go and play there because you're not used to playing other players. It's an entirely different way of playing. Right. It happened to Matt Ballard. I mean, it's probably happened to all of us who go for the first time. You're not expecting them to be as good as they are and as devious with items and tactics and stuff.
It's all about the experience, indeed, like Mark said. Like you have to experience it first to know what's going to come and what is required to be top of the pops, let's say.
Well, the other aspect too, and I think a key distinction between time trials and multiplayer. In time trials, you're just worrying about yourself. You don't care, about anything else other than you in the course. In multiplayer, even like so in SMK, you get 2v2. 1v1. You have to screen watch and you have to focus. Like, what is my opponent like? What item does he have? Is he laying a trap? Where is he laying it? Things like that. And that's not easy to do, especially like if you're just used to playing time trials and not just focusing on you. But then for me, when you go to like 4-player, that's when now it's not only you and someone else, it's you and 3 other people, and you have to say, okay, I have to take the state of the game, which is constantly in flux, and how do I put myself in the best position not to lose time, or to not finish last. Sometimes you might just want to finish second or something. So that's something where time trials really doesn't give you that sort of mentality or help you in any way for that. So time trials really just kind of lays the foundation for driving. Like like which lines to take, which ones not to take for the most part. The other thing with Mario Kart 64 is it has the scaling factor, which we talked about earlier on this show. Is that most of the time the game's running at instead of running at 30 FPS for NTSC, it's running at 15 to 20, and then that actually makes the game feel completely different. Like you can't do certain MTs where you would typically expect to be able to do them because you just don't have as many frames. Like you're going, it's not feasible. The other thing too is with 4-player versus, we play in 150cc, and time trials Mario Kart 64 is 100cc. And with the combination of the scaling and also playing in 150c where you can spin out, in 100cc you can't spin out, that's the thing where people will come in and they'll just try to do these time trial movements where you're doing these micro corrections, flicking the stick, doing things like that. And if you do that in 150cc 4-player versus, you'll spin out instantly. So it actually takes an adjustment to actually race and play in 4-player versus, because of these other nuanced factors that people might not be aware of. So
Yeah.
I just gotta say, every time I watch, if it's the European one or the Virginia one, I grow in appreciation for the necessity of awareness and the strategy for MK64, because I used to piss on it quite hard 10 years back. Now it's completely different, of course, but I think, Carol, if you remember, in 2007, the NLG 2007, we had, I believe it was 2-player versus mode in Mario Kart 64.
Yes.
And Michael Jongerius went out in the quarterfinal or something against my dumbwits in-law sibling. And everyone watching was just then and there, yeah, this game doesn't work for multiplayer.
It was actually Andreas Rudmarker that knocked him out.
Oh, was it Rudmarker?
Double Dash champion. Well, he wasn't back then, but he has been Double Dash #1 for various stints. But yeah, he wasn't that skilled in MK64.
Right.
So one comment there is that not all multiplayer modes in Mario Kart 64 are created equal, and 2-player versus is probably the worst mode.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because every mode has a different item table in the game that's built into the game, and there's a different balance of items for every mode. So 2-player GP has a different item, different set of possibilities of getting items depending which place you're in. Same thing goes for 2-player versus. Same thing goes for 3-player versus, and same thing goes for 4-player versus. 2-player versus, I played a little bit of this with other kind of highish level players. So basically there's 2 tactics for 2-player versus. If you're much better than the other person, you just go out and race and you build up a lead, and the items won't matter at all. If you're somewhat close in skill, the only tactic is to stay in close second place and try to get an item like a star or a bolt. Yeah, it's sandbagging at the very end of lap 3. That's the only tactic that's viable, and that's what makes it. It's not interesting. It's not a good.
SMK 1v1 suffers from that to some extent. Not as bad, but still it does. There is considerable sandbagging at CDM typically in match race.
Oh yeah.
But it's perhaps not as bad. I think the 4-player, I get the feeling when watching 4-player MK64 action, the 4-player item balancing is actually very well done.
Yeah, it's actually, I would say that's probably true. I mean, there's actually in 3rd and 4th place, obviously you get better items the worse place you're in, but I think 3rd place is probably the worst place for that, because you can get some really kind of trollish items where you get in 3rd place you can get a single fake item block. And in 3rd place, what is that going to do for you? It's not going to do anything for you, right? You can also get so in 4th and 3rd place you can get a golden shroom. Golden shrooms are kind of the most hated item because one, it's objectively worse than a star. It's actually your top speed is slower than a star. You also don't get immunity from the from other things like traps or lightning bolts, and you also can't ditch it. So you can't actually when you use a star, it leaves your inventory. So that frees you up for getting another item block. A common tactic in 3rd and 4th place is to hold on to an item till the next set of item blocks and then double up to get like 2 4th place items. With a golden shroom, you can't do that because it stays in your inventory for 10 seconds.
That's a big one.
Yeah, it's huge. Right. So there are. It's not balanced to the sense that there are. You're going to get the same options in any place, but there are things in 3rd and 4th that would kind of counterbalance the overpowered items like both stars. And really, what it comes down to is more situational randomness, where it's better to get a bolt or a star, or it's worse to get a golden shroom or some other item that's not as good, depending on the situation on the track where you're at. And there's actually some tactics. Actually, you can actually try to force other players not to. So there's a tactic if you have a bolt and someone else has shrooms, you can't use certain items when you're small. So one of the tactics with the lightning bolt is to try to prevent other players to miss as many items as possible. So let's say someone has a gold shroom, you can wait until just before their gold shroom ends, hit the lightning bolt, and then they'll get stuck with that gold shroom and they can't get it, they can't get rid of it, and they'll miss another set of item blocks. So there are some tactics along those lines too, which kind of help make the balance kind of more interesting in player. Whereas it's something in 2-player, it's just really not interesting at all. It's just who gets the last good item on the track, it wins basically. So, yeah.
So as a new coming or new arriving viewer, you kind of have to watch quite a bunch of matches before you kind of start to be able to appreciate that kind of deepness to the game. It's not immediately transparent as
right.
Perhaps some of the other. But it's very high level actually.
So to that point, if one of the things I do if I'm in 1st or 2nd and I have 3 mushrooms and I see someone in 3rd or 4th get a lightning bolt, my initial reaction most of the time is just to get rid of those mushrooms as fast as possible, so I'm not stuck with them, so I can get a blocker or something else. So if someone's watching and they see me with a single mushroom on a straight, and I just immediately fire that single mushroom and not cutting grass or anything like that, they might be going, why did he just waste that mushroom? But it's because I don't want to get caught with it if someone in 3rd or 4th, the lightning bolt is trying to prevent me from getting other items. That's something where it's it may not be immediately obvious to the viewer watching. It looks like to them, it's he just wasted this mushroom for no reason. But for me, it's I'm setting myself up so that I'm not getting. Someone else can't block me from more items. So I agree with that.
I think that's the oldest comment to any Super Mario Kart NBT video. Is I can drive faster than you. I don't drive into grass or sand.
Right.
Sami has had quite a share of that, and every time he answers so politely and tries to recruit them, of course.
So in Mario Kart 64, we get that a lot too, because we have the PAL NTSC split. People will post, MR will post this PAL world record, it's 2 minutes or something, on Luigi Raceway, it'll be around 2 minutes, just slightly under. But on NTSC, driving under 2 minutes is you could do that with a blindfold on, basically. Let's not get Terrence Fenner.
Right.
We'll try to avoid challenging him to that. But people any person with bare minimum of gaming experience can drive under 2 minutes. So you get that all the time. People will post, "Hey, I got a new world record. I got a 156 or something," and it's completely terrible time. But because it's faster than the PAL time, it's obviously it's a world record, right? So never. Even someone who's ever played the game could watch MR's vid and see the level of skill displayed, and then watch the 156 from this guy not sliding or doing MTs. There's no comparison. I think people are just trolling, but I honestly think some people are actually serious.
Did you just do a shout out to Terence Fenner blindfold strats, by the way?
Yeah,
I did.
absolutely.
I couldn't let that go unnoticed.
I think Fenner is the most reoccurring shout out on the show, actually.
Would be
I actually have those videos. They're just I couldn't not like keep them for posterity. Like they're just too good.
I'm looking to find the battle mode speedrun videos, to be honest.
Oh, they're the best thing ever, man.
So I just want to, I don't know how I sum it up, but the Virginia meet, I really much enjoy watching it, and the more I understand of the 4-player mechanics, the more interesting it is. I just wish there was more often.
Yeah,
or something.
I feel like everyone there feels the same way. Like we kind of malign the fact that we only can do this once per year. So we actually, the last couple of days, myself, Dan Burbank, Beck Abney, Kyle, Jake, kind of all the Discord regulars, we were kind of like scheming, like what can we do to make this so that's not just a once a year thing in Virginia? And I'm not sure like there's a good answer to that. So yeah, it's just I feel like I think everyone there, and there's a lot of potential, and I'm not sure. Like I don't think we could get to the level like Melee or something, but I feel like I've just anecdotally I've seen like there's like a trend now, like bars or like retro arcades, they'll host Mario Kart 64 tournaments for just like casual players, and it seems to be like at least in the United States, like it seems to be something that people are doing. And so, like, how do we capitalize on this kind of something that we know is interesting and it has a wide reach because everyone's played it, it feels like. The one idea that I had, and I don't know if this is even feasible, but is to get a 4-player versus match into like a GDQ. Because at that point, it's not technically a speed run, but it's more like a race. But it's almost like a showcase. I guess it'd be like the Tetris showcase or something.
Yep.
But I feel like it would be well received. I feel like it would be really interesting. I feel like the crowd would get into it.
I agree.
And I think that like that's 100 to 200,000 people potentially that might be watching this. And
can I just for a few years ago the speedrunning / GDQ climate wasn't ready for this, but I feel that now it is. Like we proposed back then for ESA, we proposed, for example, F-Zero X 4-player between the best players in the world, but they just rejected it offhand just because it wasn't
right.
Very conservative.
But now the conservativeness, like we've seen all the speedruns, so come up with all the interesting new stuff.
Yeah, and the other thing too is I feel like if you had the other thing for that GDQ is you need someone to commentate it, and you need someone who has a high enough understanding of the tactics in the game to be able to commentate.
Very important, yes.
Yeah, so I think if you had that combination of good players, good commentary, I think it'd be very well received, and I think it may be able to springboard something along the lines. I use Melee kind of as my goal, like stretch goal, but like I feel like there's opportunity there to be able to leverage Mario Kart multiplayer in sort of the same vein as like Melee. It's kind of like a cult, not cult, like underground kind of has potential to kind of like. I don't think you'd ever be like on the same level as Melee, but I feel like it could be bigger than what it is now, which is just 20 guys getting together once a year in Virginia and 10 guys getting together once a year in Europe. I feel like there's some middle ground there that we have potential to reach, I think.
Basically,
I completely agree.
Yeah, basically it's take a chance. Try to arrange a medium-sized gathering and see if people are willing to show up.
Yeah. And I'm thinking maybe if the N64, if they ever implement online play, I think that might also be another thing that kind of turns the tide in terms of getting people on board with that.
Maybe. Anyway, I hope the MK64 community grows in new and interesting ways.
Same here.
Yeah, and the online thing, I would have to get on that. Come on.
Who wouldn't, really?
Yeah.
Oh, of course.
All right. Any final thoughts?
Thanks for having me on, and definitely, if ever lines up where a topic is warrants my participation. I'd definitely be happy to be back on.
Yeah, absolutely. A pleasure to have you. And I don't
Thank you.
believe we have spoken before in this capacity, so that's
I don't think so. Yeah, just online, right?
yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
All right, so tune in for CDM next week, Mark.
Yeah. Looking forward to it.
So, Carol, when does the CDM go live?
Next Tuesday, the 14th of August, in the evening, and well, let's say late afternoon for us Dutchies, which would make it in the morning for people living in the States. We will do time trial, 1-try tournaments, and then the following 3 days we'll have full day tournaments pretty much, where we're playing, well, not everyone will be playing for 12 hours, but some of us, presumably Neo and Scoop and stuff, will play for the full 12.
There's something much more important happening on the 14th of August, though.
It's your birthday, isn't it?
Yeah, it's my birthday.
Oh, shit. I have to get you stuff? God damn it.
A hug will do, Marius. A hug and a kiss.
Oh,
Well,
that's steep.
Assuming I don't see you on the 14th, Clark. Happy early birthday.
Thank you very much.
All right, I think we're gonna call it, guys. It's been long, it's been fun and entertaining.
Very insightful, actually.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, very informative. Really interesting.
It looks like you're gonna have to save the Swedish bicycling story for the next one.
Yeah, it is very silly. I'm looking forward to telling it, but it will have to not make it into this cut. All right. Anyway, thanks for joining, guys, and that's it for this time. See you later.
Stay
Yeah.
true.
See you later.
Stay true.